Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to a new episode of the Iblis Manifestations Podcast. I'm honored to be joined by none other than my friend Christian Larson from the American black metal band Necrofier. I've been looking forward to having Christian on for quite some time, and we have been talking about this for a little while, but now brings us the very special occasion that they have a very new record on the way, which is going to be out on Season of Mist on the 2nd of June this year. Necrofier are a very interesting black metal band in the sense that, as we all know, America throughout the years has always had I suppose, somewhat of a hit and miss relationship with black metal. Now, of course, there are many legendary bands that have come from that country or even continent. However, I guess in the more modern era, there's always been a lacking of real substance when it comes to the genre, and a lot of times it has very much felt like purely an imitation of what this genre is really supposed to be. And that is, of course, my personal opinion only, but I feel that Necrofier are one of those bands that are really bringing that, I suppose, spiritual depth and darkness to what this genre is supposed to be. And, of course, I think that is probably why it makes them to be one of the appropriate bands to be featured on this podcast. So, shortly coming will be my conversation with Christian, their guitarist and vocalist and the founder of the band, and we will be talking about that and their upcoming album and also the tour which they just recently did in the States with Danzig and Cradle of Filth. So, before we continue into that, as always, thank you all very much for supporting Iblis Manifestations. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for all of the feedback. And also thank you for paying attention. It feels very powerful to have been lucky enough to have actually built the community around this podcast, which is ever growing, and the growth to me is not just about the numbers, but rather than the strength that we all share. That we realize that that there's that breed of us out there, and we're not just alone. But anyway, that's perhaps a conversation for an episode of its own. Before I also go into the episode, there is one more thing that I would really like to bring to your attention, ladies and gentlemen. Coming up in the month of April, there is going to be a very special tour happening, which is going to be featuring Massacre and Goat Semen. And this tour is actually organized by our very good friends in Isengard Promotions and also Killtown Bookings. And actually, this tour will be obviously going around Europe, but there's one very special date for this tour, which is happening on the 21st of April, which will have our good friends in Ottawa opening it. And this show is going to be dedicated to our good friend Felipe. So, if you happen to be in London or anywhere in the UK, or for that matter, anywhere in Europe, please be sure to go and support this tour. This is just a shout out for them, as I think they deserve the support, and it's going to be total fucking mayhem. So, go check it out. Anyhow, ladies and gentlemen, I thank you all very much for tuning in. Please welcome Mr. Christian Larson from Necrofier to Iblis Manifestations. All right, Christian, how's it going, man? Welcome to Iblis Manifestations. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good, man. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thanks for joining me. I know that obviously we've been talking about this for a while, and you, from my understanding, were actually following the podcast page already as well. Yeah, so I've been looking forward to this a lot because I've been hearing lots of things about Necrofier and what you guys have been doing over in the States, and just the amount of buzz that you have managed to generate based on just one full-length album and an EP, of course. But yeah, just tell me, how are things going, man? Because I believe you've got a new album coming out, so let's just start with that.
Everything's going pretty well. Finished up the record in August last year. Mm-hmm. We recorded in New York with this guy, Joel Hamilton. Joel's super great studio, kind of a little above our, like, you know, what we usually end up doing, because we kind of usually do, Dauber records our drummer, so we end up doing a lot of home recordings and things like that. And I say home recordings, Dauber's a pro, so it's not really a home recording, but it's at his house kind of thing.
Sure.
But I mean, we finished up recording and then I flew like straight from New York to Beyond the Gates. So that was kind of, it was an entertaining couple weeks.
I can imagine, yeah. And Beyond the Gates was a powerful one last year, man. Fucking hell.
Yeah, the lineup was just insane.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, was it, I didn't attend that one, but I know Merciful Fate obviously played there, which I got to see them in the UK, and that was, like, honestly probably one of the best shows I have ever seen in my life, probably, I would say.
I was on the same page. I mean, I love Merciful Fate and thought it would be a good show, but just blown away. Like, holy shit, that was some next level.
It was, like, everything from the sound, the production, but also just the musicianship. I mean, like, Hank Sherman, I thought, like, you know, oh, it'd be cool if he can do those solos like how they were. And I feel like not only he did them how they were, he almost, like, did them better. Like, somehow, not only he had his chops, he was even better.
They were on fire. Just the whole set was just, I mean, besides the set list was amazing as well. It was just, I mean, yeah, everything was over the top. Like, they did it right.
Yeah, man, it was fucking beautiful. It's nice when you kind of get surprised by something that you already think is going to be fucking incredible like that. And it's one of them things as well. You never expect you might see Merciful Fate live, but then you see them and then they turn out to be like the best fucking thing ever. So it's like win-win, you know.
Yeah, I love it when the older bands like haven't played in a while and like, cool, we're gonna do the show, and you're like, okay, it's gonna be cool, and then it just blows away your expectations.
Absolutely, and I don't think that happens very often, but this was definitely the case. Just whilst we were on to that, what was your experience of just being there at Beyond the Gates?
Beyond the Gates is great. I went in 2019, and as far as festivals goes, I mean, I would say it's probably my favorite. Just the bands you usually have, being in Bergen, able to walk around, see everything, you know, and since the town, so it's a smaller city, you can, you know, you stay somewhere and you just walk everywhere to everything.
Isn't 2019 obviously, like, Bergen's got like huge fucking history with black metal anyway, as we know, but isn't 2019 the same one where they had Watain playing a small venue with Ritual Death supporting them as well?
Yes, I saw that in that bunker cave. It was next level. Like, I had to take 3 different flights, got in. Randomly, that place was down the street from my Airbnb, and I was like, all right, here we go. And that show was just, I mean, that was some next, like, that show was amazing.
I am jealous, man.
I like in the cave, you know, it's like they keep opening in like these little, you know, like little containers of, they've probably been sitting with like some dead animal for weeks, and you could just see people run out of the back. Have you been into that place?
I never have. No, I've been to Norway. I've been to Oslo and Trondheim, but never Bergen. So I feel like I'm missing out.
But there's like it's kind of like you're coming into a cave, and then when you there's like an area with the bar and merch, and you keep going, and there's another area off where the bands play. So anytime stuff would happen, is people just run back and run out the hall. But I mean, Eric came in walking down the cave with a torch. I mean, the whole set, like, it was really special.
I know. I checked out some of the videos from it, you know, and it's like when you're there in the moment, it's annoying when people are filming, kind of, but then it's useful as fuck, you know, for anyone who didn't go, because I was watching some of the videos and it's like, I saw they were playing Walls of Life Ruptured, which to me, it was like, that was like the first song I heard by Watain, so I was like, fuck, you know, it was a really, really cool vibe, and obviously our friends in Ritual Death were doing it as well, and it's cool, man, and I guess, you know, I guess it's pretty cool that in a sense, I think this is because this is all very much kind of a European experience for the better part of history, just as we know it. But it seems to me that especially with a band like Necrofier coming up at the moment, that America now seems to have a lot to offer in that context as well, because obviously when you look at the origins of black metal and this genre, the USA actually did have a pretty I would say impactful presence to start with, especially like with the obvious one, a band like Von, for example, or even like Profanatica and those kind of bands. But it seems to me that over the years there's been a lot of hit and miss stuff, I think, but also
for a while I feel like that you would hear about was like, yeah, it would either be straight hit or miss, like, oh, these guys are great, or I feel like there's just a bunch of things that came out that kind of give it like I don't know, being American. It's sometimes I feel like there's a European, like, oh no, here we go, some more American black metal. Let's see what it is.
Yeah, I think there is a bit of that. But obviously, like there are a lot of really great examples. But I think what I like about it is that is the way you're approaching things, is that to me it seems that the spiritual aspect of black metal is far more respected within the work of Necrofier. And I think that's one of the problems a lot of people might have with US black metal, is that obviously art imitates reality, and everyone in the US is pretty much, you don't meet many American people who aren't at least somewhat invested or opinionated when it comes to politics. And I feel like that bleeds in so much into the music. It just kind of takes away from the real potential of how far that music could go, and the impactfulness of it, because it's like, politics are absolutely relevant, but the whole thing of black metal is to sort of not even get away from it, but just expand beyond it. And I think that a lot of musicians from America, perhaps throughout time, or at least my impression is that everyone's just too focused on the politics aspect of it, rather than actually trying to sort of expand the consciousness within themselves, and also like what the music experience can offer to us human beings, in a sense. And I feel like with Necrofier you now have something very interesting going on, especially with what you have created on this second album as well, which, by the way, thank you for sending me. It sounds fucking killer. I loved it.
Thank you very much. I feel you're dead on about a lot of, say, North American bands, and there's too much politics flying around, or I don't know why we need an anti-fascist black metal scene, or stuff like that. I feel like to me black metal's not about that, and I'm not if those are your beliefs, that's fine, but I feel like it overly gets pushed and then it just becomes something else, or it's a lot of stuff in America. I feel like it's a lot of like tongue-in-cheek Venom-esque kind of things, which there's nothing wrong with them. I mean, I love a lot of that stuff, but yeah, it doesn't there's a good deal of bands that do mess around with some more spiritual content, or just like the kind of like whole thing surrounding their bands. But there's also, I feel like that's like in the minority compared to like a lot of what people are doing.
For sure, yeah. I think that there's this sense of imitation, where it's imitation but only based on the surface of something rather than what's actually
it's very surface bound. Or I mean, I love a lot of just kind of like random medieval castle sounding stuff, except like that's cool, except it's like there's all sorts of different things you can do. But I live in Texas. I can't sing about castles and dragons and stuff. I mean, it's not like I couldn't, except it's not like really what resonates on me when I'm trying to create something.
That's actually a very interesting point, though. Like, where does this? Even just what did you say was the name of the album again?
Burning Shadows in the Southern Night.
Burning Shadows in the Southern Night. So am I correct to presume that when you say southern, you're actually referring to where it is that you're located, or is that okay? So
especially us, like being from Texas, I mean, it's hot here most of the year. Uh, it's a different environment. I think it really changes how our sound is on some things. So opposed to having our guitars being shrill and stuff like that, it's more of I would say our guitars are warmer, louder, in comparison to be something kind of like, say, like the Greek scene, say something like Rotting Christ and things like that, where there's say a lot more like heavy metal influence and just kind of like the song. It's a different vibe than, say, a lot of bands that come from the northern territories that are.
Or a band like Windear, for example, that you actually feel like you want to wear a jacket when you listen to.
I mean, especially like, I mean, you get northern in like Norway, like 6 months, you barely see sun or don't see anything. Like that doesn't exist here. I'll get lucky. I'll get lucky if it's cold from December to now. Like it's 83 degrees outside today, which I don't know what that is, but it's not. It's not cold most of the year.
No, that's interesting, man. But this is just this in itself is such a fascinating topic because it's such a subtle thing. Like I think almost like unless you're a musician or unless you really pay attention, then it's like just the fact that we're talking about conveying temperatures with guitar riffs and tones. That's a fucking crazy idea in itself, don't you think?
Well, where you live, I feel like helps create how, or not create, but like influences you on just things you don't even know about. And even on some of that, like I didn't intentionally do any of those things. It's just like, okay, this is the sound. This is what we're doing. Okay, this is what feels right to my ear and stuff like that. And I feel it kind of just comes full circle with being like where I live and things like that, or just environment helping shape things with subconsciously instead of it being something deliberate.
There is something to that though, because I sort of reflect back on myself as well. And the music that I used to write when I was back in Iran was entirely different to what I write now, which is fucking crazy. Like how, like I guess that one is perhaps a little bit more obvious because you could put it down to, oh well, I never got to play gigs back then, so I didn't have the feel of what songs would feel live, so I just had to envision what that would be like. Or rather just the fact that you get to play with different bands and you pick up on different things. But I think it's more than that. There's something, in the air. There's almost like there's a feeling, because like the original version of the stuff that I used to write back there was very much just straight blast beats, Middle Eastern riffs and whatnot, which many of them never actually made it to recording, but that was kind of the approach. But then like when I came here, then it sort of became a little bit more darker, but then a few more like leads and melodies, and like almost the scales that I used on the guitar changed. And I think that's kind of a crazy fucking thing. I don't know if that's purely just because I got exposed to a different kind of a scene over here, or what.
Bit of that. But yeah. I mean, for sure, like you moving that would have been a big life change, which will affect everything you're going to do.
It did, yeah, absolutely. I think to start with, I kind of like held on to the same old style, but then shortly after, within the first 2 or 3 years, the style of songwriting, even guitar playing, completely changed. Like I never once used a doom-ish riff in my life whilst I was in Iran, but as soon as I moved here, it must have been that Birmingham air, man, Black Sabbath, something.
I was about to say, I was like,
yeah.
I was like, there couldn't be a better environment for that than like where that originated.
Yeah, and that was fucking crazy because I had this bus that I used to get that used to go from between my campus to the Birmingham town center, and I used to go past this area where I think it's like some kind of swimming pool right now, but that used to be the rehearsal place for Black Sabbath, and just across the road is the pub that they used to go and drink in after the rehearsals back in like 69 or 70, when I think even when they were still called Earth, which is fucking crazy.
That's super crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, but that's cool, man. And it's interesting that we're obviously talking about that kind of raw sound of it. And I guess like when you say it, I can kind of hear that in your music. The kind of, obviously you're using somewhat more of like a lower tuning on some of the stuff as well. Or maybe that's just all of it. But like just like having those kind of, I think you got some stuff on the first record where it's kind of like black and roll esque, but it very much has that kind of wall of sound kind of thing to it, and it has that dryness of Texas. And what I'm fascinated in is obviously black metal already exists in many different formats, but when you speak of that southern darkness, exactly what is it that having been in Texas for such a long time, and where does that darkness come from? Exactly what is it that is sourcing this output of music with Necrofier?
Let's see. That's a good question. A lot of stuff, I would say, like at least half the, not half the year, but the entire summer into the fall is like pretty oppressing heat here, where it's just a little ridiculous. I would say that's like, it also being like that affects you, where it's there's only certain things you can do, or you can't go out and do stuff during the day, in the middle of the day. It turns out, I'm sure you're familiar with that from where you used to live.
To an extent, perhaps, yeah. The part of Iran that I'm from is not actually that warm because we're right by the mountains. Okay. So I'm sure if I was from the more southern part of it, it would be a lot harder. But where I'm from, we get all 4 seasons. So it's like green and rainy in spring, hot in summer, rainy in autumn, or fall, as you guys would call it, and then just like cold, and it snows quite regularly in winter as well. So, yeah. Probably not the picture of Iran that most people. Probably not the picture of Iran most people have in their minds, where they probably imagine us, living in tents by camels in the fucking desert, But
I wouldn't go that far, but yeah.
Sure.
But because I mean, Texas in general is so huge. There's the western part of the state that's desert and super dry, and then we're in Houston, so we're down by the coast, so it's almost like it's swamp like. I mean, we live in a swamp. I don't know what else to call it. But also, sure. I mean, there's stuff like, and especially being from the south, like we're 5 hours from New Orleans, so it's like it's that same kind of vibe where it's I don't know, just pressing heat, other things like that, just kind of like messes with things worth what you want to do. Like anytime we get offered a tour that's like, well, cool, we get to leave in August, I'm like, thank God. Like I just want to leave. Like I don't need to be here in August anymore, ever. But let's see. On the new record, there's a lot of stuff. So it's stereotypical to say like the crossroads and blues and stuff all originated in the South. And those stories, correct, influence from things like that. And I feel like all that bleeds into our, like, everything we do, from, like there's blues influence on our, like on music, obviously. I feel like all metal is in there for the most part.
Sure.
But also, I mean, some of the stuff just being like, for a lot of stuff I listen to, there's not that much of it. Like there's a scene here, but it's not what it is, like say where you are or anywhere and things like that. So it's being isolated from that a lot. And also just kind of, but at the same time wanting, it's like I feel like we're a part of something, but it's not really, it's more of a thing that's happening in the world rather than it's happening in our area. So I try to maybe like bring elements from us to that.
Very interesting. And is there any way where this would correlate with what you're doing on a spiritual level? Is there any kind of history there that you feel like you can sort of draw and source some inspiration from at all?
So my family immigrated from Norway probably like 4 generations ago or something like that.
Sure. I would have actually guessed that from your name, so that's interesting to know.
So it's like and then when I got introduced to metal, was randomly from one of my dad's friends when I was 12, came over here and visited. And they live in Kongsberg outside of Oslo. and he basically bought every metal record that was out in 2000 or not 2000. I mean 1992, I think it was, or 91. Mm-hmm. At that time, it was like everything was Megadeth, Exodus, like all that, like that time period of everything. But he bought like every record ever. And I just remember as a kid being like, well, what is this? And then, years later, it's like I'm looking at everything. I'm like, oh, okay. So everything I like is from Scandinavia. Yeah, that can't be a coincidence.
Of course. That's cool.
But it's I don't know if it's like I've always been drawn to stuff in that world, even stuff that's not, say, in the black metal range, like even rock bands like, say, Turbo Negro or something like that, like stuff in that world. I've always been into things that usually come from that, like from Scandinavia and things like that.
Sure. So, yeah, I love that band. Absolutely. It's I think there is something to it. It's like you might have a certain type of riffs or whatnot, but it's that feeling behind it. It's the intent of the author or the musician that really makes it what it is.
Feeling and intent, because I feel like there's so many good bands and people, or like let's take that back. There's so many good riffs and people write some things, but like how they're presented or how they're done and captured is different than what you're actually playing.
Yeah, absolutely. I always have this I mean, for some of the listeners who've been on here for a while, it might be a bit of an ad nauseum, but like I always say this about Dissection. That band, like what he created wasn't what it was purely just because of what notes or scales he used on the guitar. It was what it was because of the intent. Yeah. The compositions are fucking, the harmonies are flawless, but it was powerful because of the intent and the feeling behind it and the way that they were performed, which is sheer fucking, like almost just trying to like break the boundaries almost.
Yeah, because it makes them something so different. Because I mean, since then, like myself included, it's like, cool, let's try to do some Dissection shit. And like it's, everyone can try and everyone will, but it will never come off like that.
Exactly. Yeah, that's why I always say, everyone says, oh yeah, Thulkandra sounds like Dissection, and I say, yeah, on a very surface level, it's nowhere even near the fucking same thing. It's just like it's an homage to the scales on the guitar, not the band itself, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, that and like I feel like they did so many things, even like the intent for sure, and how like that band is, but then even what they play, it's so I don't know what to say it other than all over the place. I mean, I'm like, what did you hear? Like when you listen to it and then you're like, this is good. And then after the 100th time you listen to it, you're like, this is still good. And then when you try to learn it, you're like, what's going? Oh, fuck. Yeah. There's so many things going on right here.
I know that exactly, because I did the crazy fucking thing a couple of years ago. Well, I spent maybe about a year probably just learning the material, but I did a full guitar cover of the Rebirth of Dissection album, the live album that they did when they first came back. Yeah. And I did...
That's a lot of work.
It was a lot of work. It required a lot of neuroplasticity is what it was, because it's like I must have listened to the live album like almost if not every day, every week for like the better part of about a year. I didn't actually practice them that much, but I listened until like, because you can hear something, some notes, and where that's supposed to be on the guitar, and yeah, I recorded the full thing. It's on YouTube if anyone wants to go check it out. But doing that project actually increased my appreciation for Dissection, but also for Jon's guitar playing tenfold, because I was like, holy shit, how the fuck was he playing and singing some of this shit? This is really fucking complicated. Yeah, like he's like singing, like for example, like the ending of Mahakali, he's doing vocals and then he's playing a fucking lead at the same time. That's a totally different rhythm. I'm like, bro, it's awesome. It's really beautiful. I fucking respect it so much. But yeah,
because I'm wondering, like, even say when I'm working on, usually I work on music first, and then like I have some concepts of like lyrics I've been working on, and then I'll play this game of like what song I feel like fits the right vibe of what I was working on. Sometimes it's immediate, like, oh, oh, this song goes with this, and then sometimes it's like, yeah, we're doing this. No, that's not this song, and it kind of keeps going and like, oh, until it hits home, and then in some at that point sometimes lyrics end up sitting on the shelf because maybe they didn't fit with something we were writing. But I usually do the vocals afterwards. It's like I'll sit there after I do it and like record the tracks and then sit there and then practice and work on demos with them like that. So by the time I go to actually play the song like fully, I never have done the two together, and usually it works out. So it works out always, but I'm never ever doing something completely this complicated while I'm doing basically on all those dissection records where you're like, how you playing that riff and then singing this part over it, and they're completely contrasting, and yeah, it's impressive.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And it only, I think, adds to it's one small aspect of what adds to the legacy of what that band really was. Just to kind of come back to your album as well, the new one. There's a lot of things I really enjoyed about this. I think it's a flawless progression from the previous one, your debut, and I mean. Just the intro is fantastic, and it's just has it's so like cinematic almost, and the production is so nice on there, and I really found it inspiring actually listen to that. The Fall from Heaven is the name of the track, and it's actually the track that is on the intro of this episode, so for anyone else wondering what it sounds like. But it's a really powerful intro, which I would imagine would probably be perfect if you're to do a show. And if you're to play a gig,
it's like this. Here you go. Here's the track.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah,
we had a lot of fun doing that. The studio recorded and had, I don't even know what it's called. It looks like a piano, like an open small piano, where it has like just the chord, the exposed strings.
Sure.
And you kind of hit it with mallets and do some stuff. I don't really know what the fuck it's called, but
oh yeah, that's actually like a santur. Santur is an ancient Persian instrument, which that's essentially what it is. It's similar to that, where you actually hit it on the strings, but then it's kind of like piano strings, but I think a little bit thinner. And it's an instrument where it's basically just that. So I guess it's the similar technique that you would have used on that piano, which is actually cool.
There's a special thing to play it with. I don't know. I didn't do that part. So I was just like, oh, there's a bunch of layers on that. And then Dauber's wife, Cammie, sings in this band Oceans of Slumber. And Cammie's like phenomenally talented. She's the one that also did the vocals on We All Sing Shadows, those high parts that are on the...
Yes. Okay, sure.
So she did all that stuff. And it worked out perfect. Like, she sounds amazing.
That's fantastic, man. It's just such a powerful intro, and then going straight from that to Total Sudden Darkness, and it's really powerful, and just the fucking drums as well, man. Holy shit, they're powerful. Just like his performance is really, really, really powerful on that. I really enjoyed it.
Everything about this recording experience was pretty amazing. I really like going to the studio and then being done, and just it's like, say the whole record is an experience. Like, we recorded for 10 days, so we flew to New York, we're there, and then we just woke up and went to the studio, and then left, ate, and repeat every day. So it's your whole life for whatever, like, as long as it is, it's like basically the record. I feel like there's nothing wrong with taking a long time and doing it, other ways and things like that. But I just really enjoy it, where it's like there's memories of it, and the feeling and the vibe is all like captured in like a small time frame, opposed to going over a long period of time.
Absolutely. I mean, that's what a record is, man. It's when you're in the studio and then time is passing by, it just very much feels like you're just in the moment, and sometimes you don't really realize it, but then after it is finished, there's this sense of relief, but almost like a sense of being somber that you'll never get to feel, like that time again.
Where it's you get a certain, like you get a certain mental high off of being in the studio or playing shows. So then it's like, once you do it for a certain amount of time, you have to adjust to like, bringing it down. Cause life, it's like life can't always be here, but it's here, but you're like, okay, we're good.
Yeah, that's a hard practice, man. That's like when you're. I think that's why so many musicians, I think, off the road turn to especially drinking and drugs, because it's like you want to keep it up there, but that's just not how life works, unfortunately.
Yeah, I never figured that out until I was in my 20s and I started touring, and I would be like, come home and like watch some of my friends and like stuff's going wild. Like I had a tough time with it too, but not like. When you would watch 70s documentaries about Alice Cooper or whoever else, and you're like, oh, this is what's going on. And then, like once it happens, then it just takes over their whole life and keeps going, but whatever. But I feel like it's got to be the reason half that stuff initially becomes so bad.
Yeah, and the thing is as well, the more you enjoy it, the better of a time you have on the road with your brothers, and everyone who's around you. The harder it gets to walk away from that, And it's then, like you can many times like walk away and not even give a shit like how much you got paid or anything. It's just the memories. That's what really lives on.
You can't replace things like that, and those are special. And it's like it's starting to say it feels like you're more free when you're on the road, considering you have way more restraints, I would say, because it's like wake up, get in a van, get to the show by this time, leave, go, find some place to stay, and like repeat, kind of thing. But it is like, I don't know, there's something about it that's very freeing, where it's basically like you're out with everybody I play with usually in bands are like super close friends. So it's like you're there with some of your closest friends doing something you love. And can't trade that for the world.
Absolutely, man. It's a fucking powerful feeling, and it's one of them things. I guess in a sense, I kind of do see the traces of it in other places as well. Because you might think, what the fuck does an Iranian guy who lives in the UK have any business listening to such a thing? But one thing that I do find a lot of fascination with certain stories from veterans in the US, and how a lot of them talk about spending time abroad, overseas with the boys, and even though like their life's in danger and they could get killed, and they're out there to kill other people. It's a very weird fucking existence, but then they always say that it's when they come back that they break down, because they miss the camaraderie and then spending time on their own. And I'm not necessarily saying being a musician is exactly the same circumstances, but I feel like on a primitive level, it taps into a very similar part of our existence as a whole, which I think makes it the way it is.
It does, and like there's a lot of like my wife and I travel a lot, like when we can, and it's more usually just exploring, or we went to Bali, and in Bali it was like went to all these crazy temples, went to it's just like different things that have been around forever, experience there. It's like we took a boat across a lake so we could see some ancient burial ground that's by a tree that has a scent that covers the smell of decaying bodies, like stuff like that, where it's like I really love to experience just disappear and go do things, and like in touring one of those things, or traveling, and just I need downtime at the same time at some points, except I'm like, the more of that stuff the better.
Yeah, for sure. It's the moments you live for, isn't it? But it's like you almost have to earn it. It's like, karmically speaking, it's like life just doesn't let you only be on that. You have to create some kind of a cycle. You can't just go on the road and then never come back, even though it seems kind of like an ideal thing.
You're like, okay, we've made it. Now we did one tour. You're like, okay, you're back home. But you have to learn how to, adjust. I feel like I found enough stuff to do between touring things and other stuff and working on it, where it kind of balances everything out. But I usually stay really busy. And then when I feel like something's not going right, like I'll double down on how many things I'm doing. And usually it's okay until they all catch up to each other at the same time. And then usually end up going a little crazy, but whatever. I signed up for it.
Yeah, a little bit of crazy is fine for what we do anyway. I almost think it's necessary.
Yeah, I mean, like, if I get bored and I'm not doing anything, I don't know, I get super lost, as in, you know, like in the past, it would be more drugs and alcohol and take some places. Not like any so more. I like find better things to do. Like, I mean, I try to use that as something to enjoy instead of something to like as a crutch to fill in whatever I'm trying to figure out in life or things like that.
Yeah, man, that's very important. I find that the most useful thing for it is generally just having a routine when you come back.
Oh, routine, you know, like stuff like, usually if I keep myself at home, it's like this, like a exercise, music, and then reading. And if I usually kind of balance those out with everything else, as long as I keep those things all in play where like my mind and everything and body are just kind of going or, you know, or being used in some way or like, you know, stimulated where it keeps me focused and then over, then it seems to work out pretty well.
Absolutely, man. Yeah. Speaking of touring as well, you also did a tour last year with Danzig and Cradle of Filth. What was that like?
Nuts. It was totally nuts. Like huge venues.
Not bad.
Danzig. I mean, I love Danzig, so it was a real treat to see Danzig play every night. But he was a super nice guy. Just kind of, what's going on, guys? Hope everything's good. Let me know if you need anything. I was like, oh, all right. Thanks.
Wow.
Thanks.
Nice.
Danny Phillips was super nice. Cradle was good. Because originally we got the offer and we're like, oh, cool, we're going on tour at Danzig. I had no idea Cradle was on it. So when they sent me the flyer for this tour, I was like, oh, this is even better. Like, this is yeah.
Sure.
But yeah, the shows were over the top. It was real, like, it was a great experience all around. Like, everyone on the tour was great. Yeah, very surreal.
And what a fucking treat for you guys as well. You know, I mean, you've got one album out and then you're obviously you've been a musician for many years, but you've essentially got one full-length album out and then now you're on the road in the United States with Danzig and Cradle of Filth, you know, and obviously people can say what they want about Cradle or even Danzig, but man, they're legends.
Yeah, it's like one of the things that's funny because like Cradle after X year gets a bunch of hate or whatever, you know, from whoever. It's
almost like a standard. It's a given at this point, you know. Some of it I understand, some of it I think is unnecessary, but that's just me.
Yeah, I mean, but at the same time, it's like it's weird with bands because sometimes people will take, you know, say they have 30 records and then there's people who'll be like, they're great, I only listen to like the first 2 records, or then they're like, they suck because they put out 2 records at the end of their career that nobody likes. You know, it's just strange.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, great to see the Cradle show and stuff like that. Hang out with Danny and things. You know, never thought really that would happen.
I mean, this has been some time, but we actually did a show where we opened for them, and that was fucking crazy. We played the Wolfram Hall in Wolverhampton, you know, which is a venue that's essentially in partnership with it's a part of the Civic Hall in Wolverhampton. I don't know if you've been to the UK before, but yeah, basically. Yeah, cool. Yeah, so we did a show with them, you know, and obviously we were way younger and, you know, not quite to the level we are now, but that was an incredible experience. And I remember specifically that their guitarist, Richard, who I don't think he's with them now, but he actually like pretty much took the time to just stand off stage and watch the full set, and I always thought that was pretty cool, you know. Didn't have to do that, you know, we're only just the opening band, but that was pretty cool, and their audience were very accommodating to us as well, so it was a fucking cool night.
Well, I think, you know, when you play with bands like Cradle and things like that, I feel you probably have a better, like, everyone that's going to see Cradle is not like super elitist black metal underground dude, or is going to name off like 15 thing records we could name like right now that people are like, what? So they're like, I feel like they're more open when they watch you. You're like, oh, this is great. There's no preconceived notions or other things that go along with, I don't know, you know, that the other things that I love, but you know, it works out well for your, like, as a band.
I know you're not gonna have someone in the audience there who's gonna be like, "Hey, exactly what drum skin did Fenris use for recording the Blaze in the Northern Sky?" So it's like, I get what you're saying.
Like, they're like, yeah, you guys were great, except I could really understand a lot of shit going on this record. So you guys are totally sellouts.
Yeah, that's it. No, but that's cool, man.
I can't remember the interview. It was like years ago. It was like, it was something for Niflheim, and it was like, or it was Niflheim or somebody, and it was just like, your new record doesn't sound like you recorded it 200 yards away in a dumpster. Like, are you getting soft? And I think.
I remember reading one like that with Watain around Sworn to the Dark era, I think, and basically where Eric told the interviewer to fuck himself. That's what I remember. It's a very vague memory, but I like going through them old interviews every now and then.
It's weird when people get on, like, because there's I don't know, some people think, especially in black metal, like it's this or it's that, or it has to be this. I'm like, it can be, for the most part, what you want it to be to a certain extent.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't need to be shrilling and raw, or it does, it can be like, I feel like what you create it to be rather than defined by like production standards or art or, whatever.
Absolutely. I think the most important thing, 'cause at the end of the day, it's art. The most important thing is that it's got to be honest, that it's got to come directly from the source. And as long as that's there, then everything else is merely a tool. Really, that's the way I kind of look at it. Whether it's the production, like it's your choosing. Do you want what kind of sound do you want to have for this album? What kind of like all these other things, or like videos or imagery. They're all tools, but the main core of it is just that pure expression that exists within the art, and that's what makes it interesting, and that's what makes it what it is. The rest of it is just kind of presentation. That's the way I look at it.
No matter if you have a great recording or a shitty recording, it's just it's like, you don't need to judge it by like how, like, it shouldn't just be like, oh cool, this sounds raw, I'm into it. I mean, I'm sure there's a whole bunch of people that are that, or if it sounds too good, then it's like you've lost this and moved on to some different category. It's more like how it makes you feel, or things like that, or like what's going on with it, or do you like the songs, anything besides just like something simple as the production.
One very simple test, which I came up with this quite a few years back, and I find it interesting. If you happen to have MIDI versions of your songs, is if you want to see if it sounds good, good, but like, I don't know if good is the word, but if you really want to narrow it down, try creating an 8-bit version of the track and listen to it that way, and then see how the melodies speak to you then, even though obviously it'll sound like an old video game. But that's actually a very interesting method that I thought is, it kind of really makes your music naked, and it shows you the music for what it is. And I tried it with some of our stuff. I thought, oh, this still sounds good. So I was like, okay, this is a pretty good marker.
Write something that works good on both, and you've written something that's
exactly
like quite good riff.
Absolutely, man. So just whilst we were talking about the new record as well, for anyone out there who's wondering, what can people expect from this record in terms of its evolution from the previous one, and just generally what it really contains for people to absorb from Necrofier?
Let's see. Musically, I would say the old record was more, I don't know, like in like what we were talking about, sort of like dissection range, but not like certain elements of it, not like overall thing. But it's the new record goes in this more kind of like, I would say, Rotting Christ, Samuel, Immortal, like, I guess would be great references for it. Where there's more, I'd say there's a lot more heavy metal influence on it. The songs I feel like are a little bit different. I had a little more time with some of these because I wrote half the record during COVID, where I wasn't really working too much and had like just, like a lot of time to hash out a lot of songs. Like sometimes the
Sure.
songs come together immediately, and sometimes, you know, like, I don't know, I've worked on songs for 6 months or a day. So, you know, some of the longer things are just kind of thought out in the process, and things, a little bit more time put into the second one, I would say. As far as the production goes, the production is way more over the top for the newer record.
I can attest to that. It's the production and the sound is really, really fantastic on this album, for sure.
I like how it's like the record hits, but at the same time, I feel like it's recorded right and feels there's air in it, and it feels it's natural, but it's good, opposed to being, I guess I think some people think that when you're doing better production, sometimes it means that everything's more processed.
Sure.
But
I think it has that kind of an organic touch to it still.
Yeah.
Like, it's good, high quality production, but it's still, it doesn't feel forced. It still feels very real, if you will.
Because we tracked everything, and we were trying to, like, because we wanted to go like big over, like with where we were recording at. It was like the production would be next level, but at the same time, be like that. So I couldn't be happier with how it turned out on that end. But there's a lot more kind of like anthemic, like kind of heavy metal in this one, still with like the same vibe we've been doing, maybe a little more guitar leads.
Sure. Yeah.
But just along, I feel like we started working together more as like, well, better as a band and as a songs, and kind of putting things together and like more like layers and things like that, opposed to, like, I feel like some of the beginning stuff was a lot more just, here we go, we got some stuff, let's record this, let's go. We kind of sat with these and added more, just, you know, layers of intricacy to this, the tracks, and that were there before.
For sure. You mentioned to me that the fifth track, Destroying Angels, was dedicated to Selim Lamouchi of The Devil's Blood. And that is the correct track for that, right? So tell me what...
Devil's Blood fan. Especially like in that era, you know, like I don't know what it was, 2010, somewhere in there. I feel like there was like some kind of special magic, I guess would be the proper word for it, going on, where it was like Devil's Blood, Watain at the time. Like I said, I mean, I love all Watain, but there was kind of like those records that really were like over the top in that range. And like In Solitude, I'm sure I'm missing a couple other bands in there, but like those three especially, like there was just something going on where I was like, not one of those bands sounds the same, except they all fit something.
Yeah, sure.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, okay. For sure. So and obviously there's the case of the Decibel tour as well that they did in 2012, which I spoke to Gottfried Amann about on the podcast. Yeah.
That tour was insane. Like, that kind of like just where I was into at the time and stuff, like that kind of, those bands and stuff kind of changed me and set me like on a kind of different path, I guess. Especially after seeing, like, then when that tour was, I was like, oh, we're like three of my favorite bands on tour together. Is this really possible? Like, this is great. And that show was nuts. That tour was probably one of the best Watain shows I've seen. Just like it was, you know, like it was like a night where everything was just special, and it was like, holy shit, that happened. But Devil's Blood, like, there's something with it where it's like, I really like, I grew up listening like the 13th Floor Elevators and stuff like that, and Rocky Erickson. I mean, he's from Texas. I mean, the 13th Floor Elevators are from Houston. So seeing somebody add like the content Salim put into that with that style or influenced by that style of music, and even covering a Rocky Eric song and stuff like that, I was like, oh, what's going on? Like super into it. But just watching a bunch of interviews with him, listening to his music and stuff like that over the years has just super inspired me. And that song basically, it's a lot of stuff like I kind of took from influence from him, and also like, I don't know, eating a bunch of mushrooms and things like that, kind of all combined together is where that song ends up.
Right on. So psilocybin had a hand in the creation of that song. Interesting.
Yeah, there's a lot of it had a whole hand in this whole record. I would say, for like, I wouldn't consider this like a psychedelic record as in musically, but it's psychedelically, like the lyrics are like a lot of stuff came from that, and also just kind of like the overall vibe of just everything we were doing. Like, there was a lot of that involved.
That
But
always
it,
makes it more special. And that's interesting to me as well, mentioning the influence of 13th floor elevators as well, which obviously, as you said, are based in Houston. I mean, that's fucking powerful shit. You know, like you listen to some of those albums with Rocky Erickson, and it's really, really cool. I remember, I think, seeing an interview with Merle Allen where he said that him and Gigi Allen went to Rocky Erickson's house, and it was like a crazy place where he had like tons of different TVs and radios on all at the same time in different parts of the house, something crazy like that.
I guess the documentary's disappeared from somewhere at the moment, at least streaming, because my friend was asking about the other day. But You're Gonna Miss Me, like it shows, like they go to his house, and then he's just sitting in there, like all this makes me feel normal, and it's just static and white noise. I mean, after he got electric shock therapy, obviously it changed everything about his life.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah,
no, but it's just crazy, isn't it? Like, just the fact that people like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, just the fact that people like that get to fucking project themselves into music, it's like I almost feel kind of blessed or lucky. It's like, holy shit, like you get to hear that and you get to listen to someone who's that mentally fucked up create music and create art. It really makes it special.
It was crazy. Like I've seen him play a bunch before he passed away, but this is, and I think the last time I saw it was maybe 2011 or 10 or something. But I mean, in those last 10 years, it's like the shows be nuts. He just like kind of, you're like, is he here? And like, he'd just kind of walk on stage and he would just play. Like, I don't, I feel like, I'm like, it was impressive just because it's like he's especially just dialed in on a different wavelength. And I'm sure like but when he walked on stage, everything was just like, okay, he's still crushing it. What's going on?
Yeah, that's cool, man.
He had some rough shows in there, but yeah, just everything he's been through and like the fact that he basically played up until he passed away was pretty impressive.
I think so too. Yeah, especially at that kind of mental state. I mean, there's definitely a few examples of that in like rock and metal in general, but he's I think certainly a prime one of those. And with Salim as well, I think that it pisses me off that I never got to see them live, but I feel like his music in particular has touched me in more ways than one, and I think that the influence lives on. And I don't think sometimes that's the beauty of art and what we do, or rather what we partake in as fans of this music as well, is that it sort of conveys a part of a person in a way that like you don't have to have them on WhatsApp to have access to it. Do you know what I'm saying?
Well,
it's
I feel
way
like if
deeper
you can
than
create
that.
something where people can, if you can create songs or music or any art that people can just relate and feel, or like it causes a reaction in people in one way or another, or it inspires them and stuff, then that's when you're like, it's actually real. Where if you put enough of yourself and like what you're feeling and what you're trying to do into it, that other people will like respond to it like that on whatever level, it's like that's when it's special.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think that, again, it comes back to that point of being honest about it as well. It's really that honesty that you pour into it, that real intent, that fire that's inside you when you're trying to create the riff, when you're trying to project that out into the world. It's almost like it's almost like you're giving the world a receipt because you exist. It's kind of like that's how I feel about it. And I think in the case of someone like Selim, I think it's special, because especially like those albums, essentially they were almost like, I don't know if this is the correct word to use for it, but essentially they were kind of like wills, if you will. They were like, this is, it's just kind of like sail into the void, and that's kind of what it very much felt like. And that's obviously where that went. And I don't know, I don't want to obviously spoil it by any ways just by talking about it so openly, especially that as it's someone else's journey, but just purely from the perspective of someone who has a lot of respect and appreciation for that person's art and what he did. That's I think it's certainly worth noting for sure.
Especially like with him, especially like wherever I feel like when he hit whatever point when it was Devil's Blood time, and like he was just, it's like searching for something that's more than whatever is just in front of your eyes, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Especially like on a bunch of stuff he's ever talked about, when it's just playing a heavy metal band, get drunk, do drugs, do this and that, and eventually hit some point, and then it's like he starts to like that's where it went for him. Which I'm sure he was probably already on that path there. He's just, other things put you on that kind of course. But like, that's the whole thing. Like really with him, it's just, the world's a lot more than like, like whatever it is you see walking down the street and things like that. So it's always like, basically that's mostly everything I write about, where I'm just, it's like trying to experience different things or see what's actually like possible, or, like any things like that.
Very interesting. So, when you yourself mentioned like the use of psilocybin, for example, what are some of the things that you've experienced in that realm that you've been able to bring to the other side with you? The other side being where we are now.
I feel like a lot of that is just like because I would say if you take like small doses of it at times, it's like it breaks down some kind of like barrier between like what you're feeling, what you're experiencing, that maybe like you're mentally be blocking out beforehand. So it's like connecting you to something that's either like, I don't what if anybody wants to call it, between like spiritual or just something that's beyond just like your regular consciousness, where you can feel. And sometimes it's music that comes in, sometimes it's just like thoughts and things like that. Or, that same experience like times 15 if you take a little bit more. Mm-hmm. But a lot of it's just kind of like the other thing I really like about it is like, say after the time, like, so you take it and you have like, say your experience, which is, like different depending on whatever, every single time, I would say like whatever you're trying to experience. But I feel like the other thing that's really entertaining I really like about it is the day after or going forward. I feel like it kind of it can situate, like it helps you like experience something, and then like maybe it changes your mind or fires different things off, where like you're not like say if you're trapped, like I just sometimes do it like I get trapped in a rut or something, and I'm like this, oh okay, let's go do with this, and it kind of like changes like where I was thinking or something and puts me on a different. That's very interesting. Really during it, but afterwards as well.
Yeah,
there's lots of things like you say, like in not like mushroom specific. Let's go with like ayahuasca. I mean, there's tons of stuff in South America where there's like these retreats where they send people to get off addiction by treating with like ayahuasca, which is just a different psychedelic drug and things like that. Kind of like to rewire your brain in a way that's like not like
I think. Yeah, the thing of it is, I can 100% relate to what you're saying, first of all, but like for me, my first psychedelic experience was with LSD. And all right, cool. How old were you when you had yours?
15, I think.
Jeez, that's young. Man, your brain's not even like fully developed to be having LSD at that age. But well, you seem very coherent, and you sat in front of me.
Well,
so
I mean, it wasn't like I don't know. I didn't have any like in that time period and stuff. I didn't have any like bad trips or anything like that.
That's good. Sure.
Knew some people like in my high school at least that had some not good experiences, but.
Very interesting. Yeah, I think for me, just my own personality and who I was. I think it all changed after I did acid for the first time, because it made me aware of just the sensitivity of things. It made me more open to just certain emotions, and I think it actually made me a much more compassionate person. And I'm not saying it was all just a result of one little trip, but generally speaking, I think it did a lot for me. It changes you for life. Like they say that like acid actually stays in your system for like 72 years or something like that after you do it. So it definitely changed a lot of things.
It got derailed in the 60s whenever they like outlawed every psychedelic drug, but there's like a whole bunch of like just different properties with it. Like they've always been meaning to research. I think it's kicked back in about people's mental health and stuff, and looking at how it affects things in different dosage, and also, because it's not like you all of a sudden do this and it's like this. It's not like, say, the actual aspect of the drug being in your system that changes you. I feel like it's like the possibilities, like maybe it puts in your brain and things like that maybe you wouldn't have thought of, or things you experience through it that like wouldn't have happened without it, because you wouldn't let your guard down, or you wouldn't be connected on that level.
For me, it very much feels like it opens up a lot of boxes in your mind it's almost like feels like they already, it feels like they already existed there, but then they start opening up and it's like, oh shit, so this is, and it almost somehow grants you with a better understanding of the world, albeit the results can even feel more confusing somehow. But I think that when you're in that state, you come to some of these conclusions and realizations, to your point, but when you're still there, it's still too chaotic and hard to I suppose manage. But it is when you come back and then the structure gets reintroduced to your mind that then, like you said, you can take what you learned on the other side and then imply it in your day-to-day life, which I guess is the point that you were trying to make.
Yeah, because when I was a teenager, I didn't ever think about any of that stuff. But like now, it's like perspectives have changed and other things, and I'm like, oh, okay, I like this. But yeah, I'm a fan.
Yeah, do you still partake regularly nowadays?
Yeah,
that's cool. What's your go-tos?
I can't remember what the one's called. Because recently there's been a lot of stuff where, like in America, like there's in Colorado and I think in Oregon, in the States, like there's like mushrooms that became legal.
Cool. Nice.
So there's I forget which actual strand it is from this one guy, but like there's a couple guys that have like almost legit companies, and they're like, hey, would you like to get this? Oh, it comes in the form of a chocolate bar. I don't know. I'm like, okay, sure, here we go.
A chocolate bar with mushrooms.
It's crazy because you watch some of these guys and like what they're doing, and it's like everything we're just talking about is what they are talk about when they do it. It's not like, say, their companies build off of like, oh, here you go, we're selling you drugs to do whatever to, it's like all just, it's kind of like it's like natural and experience this, and maybe take it for whatever you want to, but it's more of like I feel like a real approach to it than it is just kind of like, say, I don't know, like it's not like a party thing from whatever I can tell, like from those guys seem to present it.
Sure. Well, psychedelics aren't made for parties anyway.
Oh yeah, it's like like there's atmospheres where I'm like this, just, like you walk in somewhere, you're like, nah, I can't be in here. I have to go.
Yeah.
I can't talk to these people, or whatever vibe this place has, that is just like, I now can feel I don't want to be part of this. I'm going to have to go to this other place next door.
Yeah. But, I think that in itself is 100%. Yeah, I know exactly that feeling that you're talking about. But I also think that's one of them things that can be useful in real life situations as well, like, because if that's one way of putting it, is it makes you more sort of it's the vibes. I know it's such a hippie fucking thing to say, but
I don't know how else to call it. Yeah, it's just like that's what like the term is now, so I'm like, here we go.
Yeah, it just makes you more sensitive to that, doesn't it? The energy of being around people, it's like you can tell, like, oh, okay, you seem cool, but I don't want to, and like just different areas and things like that. It really has a massive impact.
I mean, like, people have different energies, and like it's just, you may, like, some people, like, maybe you don't like read it as much, or you may block it out, but yeah, when you're doing something like that, sometimes it really just lays it on. You're like, okay, well, I don't want to hang out with this person. Like, I thought you were bad and you got some bad vibes, but I can really feel this and I have to go somewhere else.
Yeah. And sometimes it's just incompatible, isn't it?
it can be the complete opposite, where you're just like, I understand you, and those hilarious, whatever you want, like, it's kind of like 60s movie stuff, but it's
but those moments are very real. When you feel that positivity that you feel is very, very real. And the connections that you can also have with people in those experiences can be very powerful too.
No, for sure. Like 100%. But there's this weird, not on that alone, but like, just people and stuff, like I feel like our world is a lot smaller than, like whatever anybody really thinks it is. And especially, like, say, let's go with like our musical world of things,
Mm-hmm.
Usually it's like everybody, like I'll meet certain people, like we're talking, like we could probably talk all day. It would be pretty easy. Or, just meet certain people in our scene where it's like this, oh, okay. I was like, we're friends, but you live like, halfway across the world. Like we're on the same, like we're on the same, like, level and like wavelength of what's going on. Like, okay. But it's I feel like when you experience stuff like that, it's really, I don't know, it's special because like, I feel like sometimes it's like, I get like stuck out on some island by myself where I'm like, okay, I guess I'm just doing this. And then seeing other people that are like on the same level, like really, I don't know, it feels like it's a good feeling.
One of the most important things to always try and remember is that the world, I don't know if it's by design or not, but the modern world, it can make you feel very isolated. Like, oh, you're just on your own, it's just you. And that's not true. There's many of us who feel certain ways, and there's a real connection there. I think that you can't. It only takes a certain amount of experiences to really realize that, oh, this is here, that, oh, I'm not on my own. Yeah, you'll have your own unique thing that you should absolutely be proud of, whether it's your identity, your expression, everything, but that there are many people who are on the same page as you. And this, I think, even if you come into like the scientific aspect of it, when it comes to psychedelics, they do play a very important role in that. Obviously you can look into ancient civilizations that partook in such things, or you can also look at it just from the perspective of how, just in the example of psilocybin, for example, that these fungi actually have the capability to, like, if you observe, I believe it was Mr. Paul Stamets, who's like a massive mushroom person. That's the best way I can describe him. And then he basically was saying that these mushrooms, when you really observe them, they actually work very similarly to humans in the sense that they actually do form their own civilizations, but that they also communicate with one another. It's not through words as such, but they can communicate with one another. And he was saying that how our brains are quite similar to that. And consequently, just speaking on personal experiences, it's interesting because there's been times where I've taken mushrooms with someone else and we would both see exactly the same things, hear exactly the same things. And like you look at a picture and we both start seeing the same thing. It's like, I remember very vividly doing this with the old guitarist in my band, and doing it in our bass player's house at the time. And then he had the Union Jack like a poster on the wall, and we were both looking at that at the same time, and the poster was vibrating. But just the fact that both of us are looking at the same thing and recognizing that is a very powerful thing, because you might just look at it on a surface level and think, oh yeah, well, that's just some people on drugs who are fucking tripping. In some sense that is true, but it goes a lot deeper than that, and it's that connection and the oneness that you can have as human beings, which surpasses just your physical shell.
Because I feel like you can achieve that same thing with music, depending on how you, like, who you are, who you're playing with, things like that. Like, I feel like when, like, truly great bands have that, where they're like, when they're playing, they're all part of something that, like, it's like you're all on the same page, it's all in here, and everything that's going on is just flowing together, where it's just like, like when you're playing a show and you don't even know that you played the show, where you're just like you don't remember certain things. You're just like in the moment, and everything just is just like, it's that kind of stuff. And it, like, that stuff is not like it's not something I feel like you can make happen. It's just something that happens. And when it does, then I feel like that's when you've really hit something.
Yeah, definitely. It feels like almost like entering dream world, and then when you come out of it, it's just like you've just woken up. Speaking of dream world,
it's like you can't even call it. Sometimes you're just all, yes, what was that? And you just like it's like, and then it actually kind of affects you for a while, because I feel like that feeling will sit with you like at least like the rest of the day. Like like we got like, so you play a show and that experience happens where you like, you can't recall stuff. It's just like everything went that well. And then you can feel it with you like the rest of the evening, where you're just all, it's a good day. Like whatever you tapped into is like something special, and like it affects you. Kind of like in the same way we're talking about with mushrooms or something.
Yeah, no, I get exactly what you're saying, because it's like nowadays I almost try not to watch videos of it, purely because, even though it's useful to do that, and obviously, like it's a part of a social media thing and whatnot, it's like, it's good. And it's good to observe your own skills. But in a sense, I don't like doing that, purely because when you're in the moment, you experience something that's so deep that you almost don't even, like you say, you don't remember the details. But if you watch a video of it back, that's how your brain will redefine that moment for you. And that's not good enough. That's not close to what it's actually like. I'm never gonna watch a
video of something like that ever again now that you said that.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe not. But you know what I'm saying? Because it's like you don't remember it. So when you just see a video, that's what your mind remembers it as. It's like you add that to your own memory rather than the actual experience of it.
Yeah, for sure. Because I mean, it's, your brain remembers it one way, and then you see it happen through some, like, I mean, if you're watching it through that, you're seeing it basically, it's probably someone's phone. So if you're like re-experiencing the situation and remembering it from someone else, which can't be, like, on some of those can't be as good as, like, if it's one of those kind of nights where it's like, it just can't be explained in a video.
But I think, exactly, I think even if it was like a GoPro or something that's literally through your own eyes recording it, that's still not enough, because it's all about the feeling. It's the feeling that you get in your chest when you're up there. Like, not just your chest, but your full body, the energy and the electricity that's just fucking flowing through your entire being whilst you're
you would have to have, I mean, I feel like the only way you capture that was kind of like being like the video equivalent of music, where you would have to have somebody that's a videographer that's on whatever level that me and you were talking about playing music, where he's like, oh, let me show you how to do this. And whatever they do, like how, like, if you're like, real photographers and real videographers will capture something where, and you watch it, it's just mind blowing. But if I sat there with my phone trying to do the same thing, it just not going to look that good, or it won't.
Yeah, sure.
Because it's like, it's the same thing. It's like anything like in music and art and stuff like that is like how you're capturing it. And it's like, like, I feel like photography and video stuff would be more of like capturing different things, but it's still like, it's a different form of visual art, but capturing that is different than just taking a picture.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's even if you capture it, that's just the video, the visuals. Yeah. If you listen to it,
it still doesn't
just
have
the audio. Exactly, yeah. But when you're actually on there, whether in the audience or on stage, that's an assault on all senses, and your sixth sense too. Like everything is just, like turn all the way up to 11. And that's what makes those shows so fucking special. And that's what you kind of live for, really.
Yeah, that's why, like, when everybody was doing live streams, it's like the idea. And there was random people being like, yeah, shows just won't be anymore. It'll just live streams. I'm like, no, it won't. I think there's a whole experience of seeing a show that you can't recreate sitting in front of your computer or TV or anything.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, I mean, we did one of those streams, and actually, in all fairness, it was pretty successful, but it's just...
Streams can be good, but it's just
it's not the same.
At the end of the day, yeah, it's not like it... It's not the same. Yeah, at all.
No, and I was very prepared to take the shows real underground because I already have that experience over in Iran. I have the experience of playing shows where you could not only get arrested or fined for it, but you could get fucking killed for it, you know. So I already have that in my arsenal. So I'm not afraid of some fucking government telling me to stay in because of COVID safety, whatever bullshit, you know. If I want to play a show, I'll fucking play a show. You know, there's no stopping us, I'm afraid.
I mean, for a minute, I feel like there was like it was like no one knows what's going on, so it was like, okay, well, nothing's going to happen. And then it was, at least in Texas, stuff kind of started coming back a lot faster than a lot of other places because they were just like, we don't care, here you go. Mm-hmm. But very soon everybody just came back to shows, and then live streams still exist, except it's over. Okay, people, you can do it. It's you know, but it's like having a DVD of the show or something.
Yeah, you must have felt good being on the, I think in terms of lockdowns and things like that, or just the general pandemic. I think it must have felt good to be on the right side of that, at least by United States standards of it, considering how some other states dealt with it, you know. Like, I know Florida just, you know, they just sort of like championed it, it seems. And I know Texas kind of dealt with it in a very sort of open way as well, from what I could see, and I think that must have been good to be on that side.
The whole thing was just weird, but yeah, like not being like having to like stay at home forever was great. That and like my regular job is I'm a concert promoter, so like life was very strange for, you know, whatever, a year and a half. So
sure,
glad to be out of that. Besides the fact that like it gave me like a good dose of downtime to just kind of, I don't know, re-look at myself, figure out what I want to do and where I'm actually going, where I don't have that usual time in the regular world to do that.
For sure. I mean, it must have been stressful though, you know, because you said your full-time job is as a promoter. Yeah. All right, cool.
So yeah, it was, I mean, when everything happened, it was like I have a festival that canceled, and then every show and the first couple months canceled, and I played like this fake working for about 9 months of like, oh yeah, cool, let's pretend like the show's getting postponed again. But yeah, I mean, I had a whole bunch of free time, so I just, you know, try to spend it like as efficiently as possible, just working on music and reading and exercising and doing whatever. So I mean, I was like, I don't know what else I'm gonna do.
No, that sounds cool, man.
It was weird. There was no pressure or anything I had to do. And I hadn't really experienced anything like that before.
Sure, I understand. I guess it was like that for a lot of people, really, in different, I guess, avenues of work or careers. How's that going now then? So with promoting,
I mean, everything's
life now in that.
I mean, everything is really good, and shows are doing super great. So, I mean, as far as I know, it's back to normal, maybe doing a little better at the moment.
Sure. You know, that's like actually what I was going to ask you just now. Yeah. I was going to ask if it's even better than what it was before.
Like, I have a festival called Hell's Heroes, and this year will be the biggest year, I think. It will be the biggest year I've ever done. Like, we moved it to some outside stages, and it's probably going to do like close to 3,000 people, where the last one sold out, but it was like 1,400 people. So
fantastic. That's really good, man. How does being a promoter help you, just from the band's side of things?
From the band side, well, it helps out in since it's what I do. I know exactly how everything goes all the time, or maybe when you're trying to get something extra, what the other person's probably thinking.
So it helps you with negotiations, I guess.
Yeah, it helps with negotiations. It also helps to just kind of, because I know everything works. It's like I realistically will know like what we can probably pull off, or, you know, what we're going to get in trouble for, what we're not going to get in trouble for, or things like that.
Interesting. And does this apply to like?
It helps me out because I know everybody because of it. Like, just from years and years of doing shows, like people's, like bands in general. I mean, that's just from going to shows and doing them. And then that combined with playing shows, it makes it even more. But then on top of that, I know everybody's like agent for usually, and then maybe manager depending on that. So
I guess that's quite a handy thing to have as well, and perhaps
it's not a bad thing for sure.
Yeah, that's like one of them things. Like, I wish I could completely pick your brains on it. You know what I mean? But I guess it's one of them things that takes probably years of experience to kind of develop that understanding.
Yeah, I mean, there's different things to everything in that, but yeah, most of it's like anything else where you do something and you learn more and more and more, and then once you get to a certain point, it's just like what it is.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of where it's at the moment.
Well, what advice would you have that you have learned as a promoter, as well as being someone who's in a band, that you would want to give other bands who might not know of such a thing?
I mean, in the smallest range of doing things, like the best thing to do, I feel like ever, is to like create your own shows and put them on, try to make them successful. Like but do it in the way as in, say, your band's going to play, and just for all intents and purposes, say your band's going to headline. That way you're not searching for some band like that's going to make the show better. So your band plays, and then you pick, like, say, a band from your town that you want to play with. It's on the same level, or just like in the same, something you like. It should be a good pairing for the show, and then bring somebody from out of town that's in the same, like somebody close. So that way you're helping somebody else at the same time, and you're putting on a show with other people in your city. So you have somebody else have a good show, and it creates something else, and then that kind of usually moves on to, like, say, that same thing happening to you other places, or at least in, but all that doing, you just, like, you meet new friends, create new experiences and stuff like that, where you shouldn't wait around for, oh no, I need to open for this band, or, that stuff's great and things like that. But like, it gives you more of, like, you're in control of what you're doing at certain points.
Basically, what you're saying, which I can 100% get behind, by the way, is that rather than just sit around and wait for someone to come and hand you something, create your own opportunities, create a buzz from that, and create your own experiences to start.
Because say, like, in tour stuff, like getting on bigger tours is fucking great, because you're like, this awesome. There's going to be all these people there because you're opening for whoever. But if you don't have that, instead of just, like, you can create like you don't have to do some giant 2-week, like, months long tours. Just create like a extended weekend with some, like, in 3 or 4 different cities around you, with, like, you could just do like 4 cities and have, like, the whatever bands you think are the best bands from each of those cities, and have them play all 4 cities. And all of a sudden you've created your own tour that, if you kind of picked everything right, should do pretty well. And then it creates almost like a little scene of what you guys are.
Very interesting. And as far as, I guess, sort of the interrelations of a band with a promoter, what do you think are some of the key things that bands should be aware of when getting approached by a promoter, or them approaching a promoter, if that happens?
For sure, get everything, like, just something, like, when you're getting deals, put them in where you have something that's like, this is what it is, opposed to leaving it open.
Mm-hmm.
Because even myself, I mean, you'll get hosed by somebody that it's like, oh, the show didn't do as well, I can't give you what I guaranteed you. And you're like, that's not really how this works. But it does happen. Sure. And like, what are you going to do? Because at some points you can try to do a couple things, or tell everybody you got screwed or whatever, but it doesn't really change the fact that you got screwed.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, yeah, try to get everything in writing and that. And I feel like some of them just, I don't know, like, try to meet them, or just at least, like, trying to, like, develop some kind of friendship with them. Just like, hey, what's up? Things like that. Some of them it doesn't, like, that doesn't really work. But if it's somebody that does shows that's in your same world, yeah, I mean, especially like this only works if, say, the promoter is somebody that's in the world of your bands,
Mm-hmm.
Like, if it's the guy's an electronic promoter and only does dance nights, you don't really need, like, going to go hang out and talk about whatever. It doesn't really work. But on some of them, it's just, I feel like, just become friends with them. You got to ask about your band things and do stuff like that. But just, generally, like, if they're in the same music as you and the same scene, just go hang out. They'll be at some show.
For sure. That's a, you know what, that's a very valuable lesson, but also I'm kind of laughing to myself a little bit because I had this thought actually just quite recently because I was talking to a few different people myself, and I was thinking about this, like, and this is not to say that this is exactly a reflection of me, it's just a general sort of thing, but it's how, like, a lot of us, or a lot of people, will get into black metal because they want to create misanthropic music because they hate people, they don't fit in, and they feel like an outsider. And in order to get your music heard, all you got to do is talk to lots and lots and lots of people, which I think is very ironic.
On some of that, I feel like, I mean, yeah, it puts you in some kind of weird thing. But on some of that, I still feel like, unless you're the complete extreme version of that, it's more just like a lot of like what society is and people, and not say, and this goes back to what we were talking about earlier, where there's a whole bunch of people that are on the same wavelengths as you. And when you hang out with those people, you're all of a sudden like, oh, okay, this isn't as bad. But some of that just depends on like how far that like runs deep into, But also, if that's how it is, you should be having a one-man project and just releasing records and not trying to play a show.
Absolutely. Yeah. The thing is, man, like this, I mean, it's a very valid point. You're right. Not everyone is like that. And you can find, what I am personally interested in, like just especially the older that I'm getting, I'm more interested in what I have in common with people rather than, what our differences are. That's the part that I focus on, because I already know myself in a sense that I know what my interests are. I know my strengths and weaknesses, but the thing is, and this is a kind of a tough pill to swallow, but a lot of things become more clear once you realize that everything in life is a skill. Mm-hmm. And that can also include just something as simple as social interaction. That's a skill. Yeah. And the more comfortable you get with that skill, the more sometimes you realize, like, oh, I don't really hate people as such. Maybe there are parts of them that I've rejected within myself, which I can be judgmental of or I can criticize. But really, a lot of that kind of misanthropy comes out of lack of skill to be able to engage with other human beings. Because once you can do that, it's actually quite a satisfying thing to do, to connect with other people and to, this is one of the reasons why I have this podcast. Like this maybe 7-8 years ago for me would not have been something I would have ever done, other than just my passion for music. But it takes a skill to be able to communicate with people and find those common grounds.
Yeah, because I mean, you're very good at this, where we can have a conversation and everything seems to flow. Where I've done some where I just sit here going, "We still doing this? Like, going on? Okay, sure."
Well, I'm glad that it's not felt like that for you, man. I appreciate it. I've actually really enjoyed our conversation, man. So thank you again for jumping on. It's been really cool.
Thanks, man.
It
was funny because I was actually going to message you. Like, hey, I was like, I don't know if you have time, but like, I'd love to be on the show sometime this spring. And then like, you sent me a message like a couple days later, and I was like, okay, well, that worked out.
Holy shit. Yeah. How about that then? I did not. This is obviously, for anyone listening, that's the first you've mentioned that to me. So I'm very happy to hear that. And I think obviously with yourself as a musician and and everyone else who's been on the podcast, I think you fit in here perfectly. So absolutely.
I can't remember the first. I think the one you did with Bjorn was the first one I watched.
Sure.
And I think I'd seen some band stuff, then saw yours, and then I was like, okay. I was like, here we go. And I was like, oh, this is great. Like, your show's good.
Awesome. No, thank you very much, man.
Because you talk about, like, I feel like the right things and it works, where all together, where it's instead of like, I don't know, some people have like a list of questions that they ask and it's like, okay, here we go again. What do you say? But like, I feel like there's it's more of like an actual conversation and there's real things in it, opposed to just, hey, when's the record come out? When's this? Something. And I'm like, those things are fine for some stuff, but like, that's not the stuff I really like to do.
Yeah, I think for me, I really appreciate hearing that. That's exactly, like the purpose behind this. But the thing is, as well, for me, this doesn't feel like a chore because I'm naturally, first of all, a very curious person, and I'm also, like when I listen to music. Ever since I was like a teenager, when I listen to music, that to me is my communications with the artist that created it. So like I always have questions in my mind. I always have things that I wish I could say to the person that has created that music because it generates a reaction in me, and I think it's very valuable to. The thing that's beautiful about this is the fact that I get to actually ask those questions. I get to have those conversations, and cool. Yeah, and on the plus side, that gets to be shared with other people who might have the same things as well. So I think it's almost like it's not your usual media journalism kind of thing. It's to me, I look at it almost as an artistic extension of what someone could have through music. You know what I mean? Without spoiling too much of like the mysteries and whatnot. I think that's what's good about it. And
like, because there's a lot of stuff you should, like that. And usually you bring them up in things where you can talk about it without, because I don't do interviews where someone's like, oh, let's talk about this song and what this means. I'm like, no, I can give you a general idea of what the song's about. But like, I feel like a lot of that is also having people interpret it and seeing what they get from it rather than you telling people what it is. And at some points, I feel like some people talk about songs, it just messes it up. You're like, the song's about this. You're like, okay. That's great. Well, I read everything and saw it as this. And I'm like, well, you should have it as that if that's what it is.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
everyone.
Some stuff's a little too specific and you're like, this is what this song is. And that's fine. But that's not how I write stuff. So.
For sure. And you can write something and play it to like thousands of people and every single one of them will hear it differently through their own scope. Absolutely. And I think one of the things is as well, like to your point, you might have a song that's about killing God, but then maybe the inspiration from it came from someone breaking up with their girlfriend. As soon as you tell someone that, it's like, okay,
Oh, you ruined it. Like, this was supposed to be that. You're like, they're both about you being set free, so just let it be.
Yeah, exactly. Because if you don't tell him that, it might actually encourage him to kill God or something. I don't know, but anyway, man. Just to kind of round things up here as well. Can we expect to see Necrofier in the UK or just Europe at any point soon?
Hopefully. I'm trying to figure something out. It's a little tough with how everything seems to be going over there as far as inflation and things like that.
Sure.
But I think maybe spring of next year, like I would want to say this fall, except I don't feel like it's going to happen. But maybe like spring of 2024, I'm hoping.
That would be fucking awesome, man. I saw that you had posted something about our friends mutual friends in Inkarsag, about potentially doing something with them, which that would be really fucking cool if that might still be going ahead.
Yeah, I want to, hopefully at some point we'll be doing something. I've said this, all right, get to Europe, let me figure this out. Okay. And then it just goes, all right, cool, we'll figure it out, whatever. Yeah. It'll happen at some point. I just need to get it actually locked down.
Yeah. Get the ball rolling. No, that sounds absolutely fucking great, man. And who knows? Perhaps we might even share the stage ourselves. I'm sure. Yeah. Me too, man. Anything that people should be on the lookout for up and coming from Necrofier? Obviously, the new album included.
I guess just new record. There'll be singles out in the spring, and then the full thing on June 2nd. So
awesome, man! Burning Shadows in the Southern Night. I encourage everyone to go and check out this record. Obviously, thanks to Christian, I had the honor to listen to it early on, and it's a fucking solid black metal record, and it's just that pure Southern Texas darkness, as we say.
Thanks,
man. Yeah, Christian, thank you so much, brother, for joining me on the podcast. Really enjoyed having you on, and all the respect to you for what you're doing with Necrofier, and all the best with this new album as well.
Thank you, man. Thanks for having me on and everything.
Absolutely. It's been my pleasure. And to everyone else listening to the show as well, thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next episode of Iblis Manifestations. Cheers.